All right, so we have to now make these two things go side by side. So let's go ahead and start off by going into um, what we want to do is we want to make each of those elements, the article and the aside, we want them to display as inline block. So I can add it to these two properties here, but instead, since both of those elements are going to have the same properties, I'm going to go ahead and do a combination and say article, comma, aside, and then brace. And now the whatever properties I put in here, so these needed to have two unique colors, so they needed to be separate. But for these other ones, I want to display this not as block level elements, but display as inline block. And we use inline block so that we can maneuver things above and below. If we just use inline, we even with margin and padding, we wouldn't have an impact on those things. So inline block means that it's going to change each of the elements so that instead of being 100% of the width like they are here, they are going to be only 100% of the content that are contained within it. So let's do file and save all and then refresh. And there you go. So we have some problems. The boxes are too small, the boxes are too far apart, and the boxes aren't aligned with each other. So we're going to have to take each one of those. So what's going on here? Well, there's more content on this line than there is over here, so that's why they're two different widths. So we want to make them the same width. The other thing is we have this space in between, and that's because of the magic margin, I call it, because it's not in the inspector. You can't find that um, in there. So we go right mouse click and inspect. So it turns our inspector on. And if we go into our section, you can see that, I should go over here. You can see that the article and the aside, neither of those, yeah, neither of those have margin and padding on it. Well, you see a little bit of border here, but no margin and padding. So if I say 0 margin, it's not going to move them together. That 4 pixels is going to stay there. So we're going to have to do a negative 4 pixels. The other thing we're going to have to do, that will bring them together. Next thing we want to do is we want to make them so that they take up half each of that section box that's there. And normally we could do that by counting how many pixels we would need. So it's 1200 pixels, then we would need 600 each for each side. But then if the size of the box changes, they're going to have scroll bars or not fit the thing. So the best thing to do is use percentages. So let's go ahead and start fixing things. One of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to say width is 50%. So each side will get a half. And then we'll do file, save all, and then refresh. And uh-oh, they don't fit. Well, why don't they fit if it's half-half? And that's because of padding, margin padding, and um, border. And actually, the only thing that we have here is that 1 pixel border. If we made it 50% each minus 1 pixel, they would fit. But what we want to do is we want to have it say, well, don't count that then. And we can do that by changing the um, way they do the box sizing. So box sizing, we have two different ones we can use. We can use content box, which is what the default is, or border box, which will mean that the border will be included in the 50%. And we'll do file, save all, and refresh, and that fixes our, oh, it didn't fix our problem. All right. Box sizing, border box. It should have. What's going on here? Huh. Okay, so they don't fit side by side, and now I realize why it doesn't, and that is because we didn't remove the magic yet. So between the article and the side, we have 4 pixels of extra space, and that's why they don't fit. So we're going to get rid of that space for the aside. We're going to give it negative margin. So we'll do margin left, and it'll be a negative 4 pixels. And then we'll do file, save all, and refresh. We should have done that first, then I wouldn't have had that problem. All right, so now they fit side by side. Problem is I'm missing this part up here, and that's because these are made so that they align on the bottom. So the vertical alignment, the way they align up and down, is based on this bottom part right here, not the top part. So we wanted to align to the top. So let's go ahead and do that. I don't know why they don't default to top. That would make my life a lot easier. So let's go ahead and change that. And that is the vertical align, and that's going to be top. You might be wondering, how am I going to remember all these properties? Well, you don't. The more we do it, the more you'll remember. And of course, W3 Schools is there. When I'm teaching this in the classroom, I'm not limited by a 10-minute video. We spend a lot of time on W3 Schools because when we have a problem, then we go look for the answer to that problem. Okay, and you can see now, well, it works on the top, and then we got that stuff on the bottom. Well, because that's the height is dependent on the content, and there's more content. We can start adding content back and forth until we get it. But the main thing is what we have to do is just make these the same height. So if I come in here and I say that both of those, right now the height is around 160. If I do height, and let's do 175 pixels. File, save all. And now they're both going to be the same height, even though they have two different contents, and then they'll be aligned at the very top. Everything's working perfect now. All right, so next problem we have is you can see that these are all centered. We don't want them centered. So let's go ahead and uncenter them. Now I can either put it here and put a text align left, or what I'd like to do better is put it in section. Remember, section is the parent, and we want everything in the parent to be left aligned. So we'll do text align left. If you put it here, you can argue that's better because I'm not adding an extra thing. But I'd like for you to remember we have both of these children in that. And if we make the parent align left, then the children will also be, because they'll inherit that property. Either way is just fine. Okay, that's good, but you can see that it's mushed over to the left there, so we want to push that to the right. And to do that, we're going to have to add some padding. So let's go ahead and do that. Whoops. And let's do padding. Whoops, left. Padding left. So if we put padding on the left, it pushes it to the right. And let's do 10 pixels. File, save all, and refresh. Bang. Now it's off, not, it's much better. So we pretty much have it all done now. The problem that we have is that when we squish it to the left, you can see that we're going to end up with scroll bars on there, even though this is 50% each. So what we want to do is we want to go back into main, and instead of making it, I have 800 here, but you have 1800 pixels or 1200. I can't remember what I started with. But instead, we're going to make this 95%. So it's going to get larger and smaller based upon the size of the window itself. We're going to make it 95%. Let's do File, Save All, and then refresh. Boom. So you can see now, if I move this in and out, now you can see that everything gets larger and smaller. depending on that. Now we have a problem. The picture does not follow because the picture goes that size, so it breaks out. And when we get a little bit smaller, some of that text is going to wrap outside the box. So we're going to fix this a couple of ways. One is we're just going to go ahead and make that the article on the side, instead of being 175, let's just make it 200 pixels. Whoops. 200 pixels. File, save all, and then refresh. All right, and that will make it taller now. And then when I bring this in, it can wrap and it won't go off the side. So that's good. Next thing we want to do is fix that picture. So the picture here is it's going to remain its native size, but it's in the footer now. And if you remember, in the footer, it's in a figure. So we'll do footer, figure, image, or we could have did actually footer image if you want. Both ways work well because, but this is more specific, and I try to be as specific as I can. What we want to do is we want to do the width and make it 100%. Now it's going to accordion in and out. File, save all. So let's go ahead and move it in and see. So this is broken. And then when we refresh, now you can see it resizes. You can see we have a problem up here with this right here. We want to contain that in there. Remember, we have negative margin on here, and that's what's causing some of this problem. We can fix that, and we'll fix that probably in the next lesson, next week's lesson, when we start talking about media queries. But for now, that's fine. We're going to get almost all the way just by using what we call flexible sizes. So as you can see, as it gets smaller, everything wraps nicely. And you can see we're up to about, that's 350 right there. That's as small as you care about. A smartphone, which is the only thing that can be able to see this, you can see this is all messed up here. So ignore this. But this is all working fine, and so is the picture. But the picture is not always going to work fine. If I make the window bigger, you can see that we'll have a problem. That picture gets way too big. So what we want to do is we want to say that, well, I want it to be 100%, but stop growing at a certain point. And that certain point is going to be at 650 pixels. So that, in order to make it stop growing, we'll do max width, and we'll make it 650 pixels. File, save all, and then refresh. And you can see now it stops growing at the 650 pixels. And that makes the picture look fine. I think it's way too big, but it will shrink down the way we want it. All right, well, looks like this is over. We're ready to start our next lesson where we're going to upload this to Freehostia.